Morning, everyone. This is Russell Rucker, and I'm here for another constitutional talk. And I think the most important thing that I want to get to today is our separation of powers. Now, a lot of people want to point to amendments and different sections as if they were what they perceive to be very important, like the ten amendments that consist of the Bill of Rights. Then you have a lot of people wanting to point to the Reconstruction amendments. But I think what we need to get to here, and first of all, let's talk about Article One. Now, Article 1, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress of the United States. Now, prior to the convention, we did have a Congress of the United States. It's called the Continental Congress. And we had a Articles of Confederation created. And from that point on, you had the Congress of the Confederation. So this is really just a continuation of Congress. And when you get into the convention itself, they spent a great majority of the time arguing over how to deal with Congress. And one of the things they did was they divided Congress into two pieces. Into legislative branch was the House of Representatives and the Senate, and they gave them different powers. And along with those powers, you get the House allowing to have their own rules, the Senate allowing to have their own rules. The Senate shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislatures thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have one vote. So even there, they didn't give it to the people, they gave it to the states. On and on we go with the Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, there should be an oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside. So there, during impeachments, you have the House creating the complaint and document authorizing the charges. You have Senate sitting as trial. You have the primary third branch, Article 3, justice seated. And this is important. So Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, it says. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, which I just mentioned, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of 2/3, and to expel the members. So as you go through the Constitution, you'll find all these different pieces split up all over. Okay, but Congress shall have the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states, with Indian tribes. They have the power to establish a uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies, to coin money, regulate the value of foreign coin, to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting securities and current coins of the United States, to establish post offices, post roads. As you go through this long list of Article 1, you find all kinds of duties and regulations of the first branch of government, the legislature. That is what they saw as the most important role, and why most of the Constitution, the original text of the Constitution, goes through Article 1. But then we get to Article 2, which is the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the vice president, chosen for the same term, he will be elected as follows. And then you go into the next section, and they're setting up the electoral college. Now, what makes our system unique is we have a president that is not elected by the legislature like what you would have in a parliamentary system. And so the executive, the president of the United States, in other words, is elected wholly different. And that's why you can have a president of one party and the Congress controlled by another. In fact, Congress can be controlled by one party in the House and a different party in the Senate. You have all these divisions of power all throughout our Constitution. This is what you have. And as we roll through Article 2, the president, vice president, all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for. And it gives you specific reasons that allow you to remove an officer. And that's conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, high crimes and misdemeanors is just another way of saying treason against your state, because that was one of the proposed ideas. But that was removed for the other language. The President of the United States' main role is to serve as commander-in-chief and to be commander-in-chief over both the Army and the Navy. In other words, his primary goal is to protect the nation from invasion, from within or without. This is an important role, and the other important thing, the President of the United States is in charge of the executive branch. When Congress creates departments, it's the President that has to initiate all the laws and the rules and regulations that Congress provides. But the President cannot act alone. He has to have law passed by Congress in order to actually act. Well, of course, over the last 250 years, we've created a lot of departments, a lot of bureaucracy, so the president can act initially on what Congress has already approved. And this is an important distinction between the first branch and the second branch of government. Then, the third branch. So we get to the third branch of government, and the third branch is what we would call Article 3 judges. Okay, Section 1, the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. So Congress's role is to pass judicial law and set up other courts. Now, this was done way back in the 1790s when we had a judicial act passed that set up other courts. And we have set further courts up. We have eliminated courts. We have done all kinds of different things in that realm. The judges, both of the Supreme and Inferior Court, shall hold their office during good behavior and shall at times receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. They shall hold their office during good behavior. That means they cannot be removed unless by bad behavior, mostly by impeachment. There are boards that can be established to oversee judicial conduct, but you cannot oversee the Supreme Court because they have the ultimate power over what the law actually says. But what's important with the judiciary is they serve for life. And why do they serve for life? They serve for life so that political waves going back and forth through the republic will not affect the court, because the officers of the court don't have to run for office. If we had to have an election of judicial officers, then they would be controlled by one party or the other at all times. The purpose of removing politics from the third branch of government, the judiciary, from Article 3 judges, is to preserve them from the politics. Some people seem to believe now that it's already been corrupted and we just need to hold elections. Well, what good's that going to do? Because you're going to have exactly the same problem. We need non-partisan judges. And when a president is entitled to nominate the judges of the federal branch of Article 3 judges, with the Senate's responsibility of advising on those appointments and consenting to those appointments. So you have two branches, once again, in what is ultimately an enormous division of power spread across the entire government. There are rules against congressmen holding another position, holding a government job, for this very reason. Everything is divided up so that no one person can achieve too much power. Parties have achieved too much power, and I wouldn't dispute that. And the problem of party is one that George Washington himself cited in his farewell address of the problems. But in the convention, they were worried about single people and the flaw of man of achieving too much power. These divisions of power protect all the citizenry, because without it, we would be creating situations where people were acting as kings over the population, which is something we don't want or need. There's been a lot of talk recently about some of these powers, and we've changed things in the Constitution, like we've allowed for a direct vote for senators. Some of these things that we've done have weakened our government, have weakened these protections. We need to protect ourselves from the governing body. The government, the president, the House members, the judges, they serve the people. The people do not serve the government. At least that's how it's supposed to work. I know this has been an overall discussion here today, and most of you probably understand this fairly well, but I thought we needed to go through the separation of powers again, because there's a lot of discussion and a lot of legal back and forth lately concerning many of the aspects of our country and of the power itself. The power between the courts and the president and the legislative body, and this juggling act back and forth, this wrestling match between departments. Even though we're at a point in time when there are conflicts between them, it's the governmental system that's vitally important here, that we all must adhere to, and that we must try to protect that which should never be destroyed. It is our heritage, and it should be our goal to preserve for future generations our system of government. The personalities that are in power, that maybe in the Congress or the senators or the presidents, Those are second to the system that we should be adhering to and living under. And that, my friends, is what I want you to take away from this today, what I want you to think about. It's not about who happens to be president of the United States at the present moment. It doesn't matter who is the Senate leader, or who's the leader of one party versus the other, or who's the Speaker of the House. They matter far less than the system in which we live under and which we have accepted as a government. And that, my friends, is very important. And with that, we'll catch you next time on the next Constitutional Talk. Have a good day for now, folks. We'll talk to you next time. Bye for now.